Commander Jake Morrison sat in his worn captain's chair, watching the stars drift past through the main screen of the USS Defiance. The old patrol ship had seen better days. Her hull was scratched and dented from 20 years of service, and her engines made strange noises that worried the engineers. But she was home to Jake and his small crew of 38 people. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from the communication station. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and checked the time. They had been on patrol for 6 weeks now, floating through empty space and checking for pirates or smugglers. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. "Sir," called out communications officer Danny Park from his station. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." Jake sat up straighter. "What kind of strange?" Danny frowned at his screen, adjusting the controls. "It looks like a distress signal, but it's coming from way outside human space. The signal is weak and breaking up." "Can you clean it up?" "I'm trying, sir. Give me a minute." Danny's fingers danced over his keyboard. The static-filled noise coming from the speakers slowly became clearer. Soon they could hear a voice speaking in accented but clear English. "This is Ambassador Zefahai of the Corvani Republic. If anyone can hear this message, we need help. Our worlds are dying. Our people are being killed. We have tried everything, but we cannot stop them. Please, if there is anyone out there who can help us, we are begging you." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Corvani were famous throughout the galaxy. They were one of the most advanced alien races anyone knew about. Their technology was hundreds of years ahead of humans. Their military was so strong that other alien species often asked them for protection. If the Corvani were asking for help, something very bad was happening. "Keep listening," Jake told Danny. "Record everything." The alien voice continued, filled with sadness and fear. "We are the last survivors of our people. The Devourers came to our space 3 months ago. They destroyed our outer colonies first. We thought we could stop them with our fleet. We were wrong." Jake had heard stories about the Devourers, but he always thought they were just scary tales told by traders in space bars. They were supposed to be some kind of hive mind that ate everything in their path. Most people thought they were just a myth. "Our greatest warships could not even scratch their bioships," the Corvani ambassador went on. "They do not fight like any enemy we have faced before. They come in endless waves, and when we destroy one of their ships, 2 more take its place. They learn from every battle and become stronger." The communication grew weaker for a moment, then came back. "We have heard stories about humans. They say you fight differently than other species. They say you do impossible things when you are desperate. We do not know if these stories are true, but we have no one else to ask. Our homeworld will fall in days. If any humans are listening to this, please help us. We do not want to die alone." The message ended with a long burst of static, then silence. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Jake looked around at his crew. They all had the same shocked expression on their faces. "Danny, send that recording to Earth Command right away." "Mark it as priority 1. Yes, sir." Jake stood up and walked to the main screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire alien civilization was about to be wiped out. The Corvani had technology that humans could only dream of. If they couldn't fight the Devourers, what chance did anyone have? 6 hours later, Jake received a response from Earth Command. Admiral Lisa Parker appeared on his screen, looking tired and worried. Behind her, Jake could see the busy command center on Earth, with officers rushing around and screens showing star maps. "Commander Morrison," the Admiral said, "we've analyzed the Corvani message. Our scientists confirm it's real. We've also picked up other signals from that area of space. It looks like several star systems have gone completely dark in the last few weeks." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Admiral Parker sighed. "We want to help them, Jake. We really do. But our main battle fleets are tied up in 3 different conflicts right now. The war with the Helix Empire is using up most of our ships, and we have 2 other situations that need our attention. So we're not going to help them?" "We didn't say that." Another voice came from off-screen. General Matt Rodriguez stepped into view. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from old battles. "We're putting together a relief force, but it won't be pretty." Admiral Parker nodded. "We're calling up the Reserve Patrol Division. Every ship we can spare that isn't already fighting somewhere else. It's not much, but it's what we have." Jake knew about the Reserve Patrol Division. It was made up of old ships like his own, crewed by people who couldn't serve on the front lines for various reasons. Retired veterans, disabled soldiers, academy dropouts, and volunteers who were too old or too young for regular service. Other military units sometimes called them the leftovers. "How many ships?" Jake asked. 13, including yours." "Captain, Amy Sullivan will be in command. She's taking the USS Endurance as the flagship." Jake knew Amy Sullivan. She was a good officer who had been passed over for promotion too many times because she spoke her mind too often. The Endurance was even older than the Defiance and had been scheduled to be scrapped next year. "Sir," Jake said carefully, 13 old ships against an enemy that destroyed the Corvani Republic? That seems like ... like suicide?" General Rodriguez. "Finished. Maybe, but sometimes the impossible happens when good people refuse to give up. Besides, we're not asking you to fight their whole fleet. Just get in there, rescue as many Corvani as you can, and get out." Admiral Parker leaned forward. "Jake, I know it's not much, but these aliens asked for our help, and we can't just ignore that. Someone has to try." Jake thought about the fear in the Corvani ambassador's voice. He thought about his crew, most of whom had volunteered for dangerous missions before. He thought about the oath he had taken when he joined the military to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "When do we leave?" he asked. "Rendezvous at Titan Station in 18 hours, and Jake?" "Good luck. You're going to need it." The screen went dark, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts and the weight of what they were about to attempt. Captain Amy Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Endurance, looking out at the strangest fleet she had ever seen. 13 ships floated in space near Titan Station, and none of them looked like they belonged in a war zone. Her own ship was 40 years old and should have been turned into scrap metal months ago. The other 12 vessels were just as bad, or worse. Amy was 52 years old and had been passed over for promotion 7 times. Her superiors always said she was too independent and asked too many questions. She had commanded patrol ships and transport vessels for most of her career, never getting the chance to prove herself with a real warship. Now, finally, she had a fleet to command. The only problem was that it might be the worst fleet in human space. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres from the tactical station, "I have the complete roster of our ships and crews." Amy turned to look at Ryan. He had been one of the best fighter pilots in the fleet until a Helix Empire torpedo took off his left arm 2 years ago. The doctors gave him a mechanical replacement that worked perfectly, but the military decided he was no longer fit for combat duty. Amy was glad to have him. His tactical mind was still sharp, even if the bureaucrats couldn't see it. "Let me hear it," Amy said. Ryan looked at his screen. "The USS Defiance under Commander Jake Morrison. Good ship, good crew, but she's 20 years old and her engines need major repairs." The USS Liberty, commanded by Captain Helen Brooks. She's a converted cargo ship with improvised weapons. The USS Valor, USS Freedom, and USS Justice are all old destroyers that were supposed to be retired last year. Amy nodded. She knew most of these ships by reputation. They were the vessels that got the jobs nobody else wanted. "What about the crews?" she asked. Ryan's expression grew more serious. "That's where it gets interesting, Captain. We have a lot of people who don't fit the normal military profile." He brought up another screen. Chief Engineer Kate Walsh on. The Endurance is 67 years old. She retired 3 years ago, but volunteered to come back for this mission. Communications Officer Ben Clark has severe PTSD from the Centauri campaign. The medical board said he was unfit for combat, but he's one of the best signal specialists in the fleet. Amy had met Ben during their brief preparation time. He jumped at sudden noises and had trouble sleeping, But when he sat down at a communications console, he could make miracles happen. She was happy to have him. Navigator Nina Ross is legally blind, Ryan continued. She uses a neural interface to see spatial mathematics. Most captains won't take her because they think it's too risky, but her navigation calculations are perfect. Every time, Amy smiled, she had requested Nina specifically. The young woman could plot courses through space that seemed impossible to everyone else. The rest of the crews are similar, Ryan said. We have retired veterans who are supposedly too old to fight. Academy graduates who couldn't pass the physical requirements for frontline service. Volunteers who have medical conditions that keep them out of regular military units. And a few people who just never fit in with normal military discipline. Amy walked to the main screen and looked out at her fleet again. To most people, these ships and crews would look like a collection of rejects and failures. But Amy saw something different. She saw experienced people who had been pushed aside by a military system that only valued youth and perfect health. She saw veterans who knew how to fight because they had done it for real. She saw specialists who had learned to work around their limitations and become better at their jobs because of it. Captain Sullivan, came a voice from the communication station. Incoming message from Admiral Parker. Put her through. Admiral Parker appeared on the screen, looking tired and worried. Amy, I know this isn't the fleet you would have chosen for a mission like this. It's the fleet I have, Admiral. We'll make it work. I hope so. The situation with the Corvani is getting worse. We're intercepting more distress calls from their system. It sounds like they have less than a week before their homeworld falls. Amy felt the pressure of time weighing on her. A week to get there, figure out what they were facing, and somehow help an alien species that had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. There's something else, Admiral Parker continued. Word about this mission has gotten around. Some of the regular fleet officers are, let's say they're not optimistic about your chances. Amy knew what that meant. The real military was laughing at them. To the officers commanding brand new battleships and perfect crews, the reserve patrol division looked like a joke. Let them laugh, Amy said. We'll see who's still laughing when this is over. After the admiral signed off, Amy called a meeting of all her ship commanders. They gathered in the Endurance's small conference room, 13 captains who looked like they had been chosen by random chance. There was Jake Morrison with his friendly smile and calm confidence. Helen Brooks was a former cargo ship captain who had volunteered when she heard about the mission. Captain Bill Stone of the USS Valor was 70 years old and should have been fishing somewhere instead of preparing for battle. I know what people are saying about us, Amy began. They think we're the fleet they send when they want to look like they're helping, but don't expect any real results. They think we're too old, too damaged, or too inexperienced to make a difference. The captains listened quietly. They had all heard the whispers and jokes. They're wrong, Amy continued. We're not the prettiest fleet, and we're not the newest, but we're the fleet that volunteered to help people we've never met, knowing we probably won't come back. We're the fleet that said yes when everyone else was busy. And we're the fleet that's going to prove that heart and experience matter more than perfect test scores and shiny equipment. Meanwhile, in the Corvani system, Ambassador Zephyhi received regular updates about the approaching human fleet. When he learned that only 13 old ships were coming to help his dying civilization, he felt his hopes collapse. The humans were trying to help, but what could such a small and outdated force accomplish against the Devourers? He began composing what he believed would be his species' final message. A thank you note to the humans who had tried to help, even though their effort was doomed to fail. At least the Corvani would not die completely alone. Back at Titan Station, the human fleet finished its preparations. Ancient ships were loaded with supplies and ammunition. Crews that didn't fit anywhere else in the military checked their equipment. One last time. In a few hours, they would jump to hyperspace and begin the journey to what might be their last battle. Amy stood on her bridge and gave the order. All ships, prepare for jump. Time to show the galaxy what humans can do. The jump to hyperspace took 3 days. When the human fleet finally dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Corvani system, the sight that greeted them made everyone fall silent. Captain Amy Sullivan stared at the main screen of the USS Endurance, unable to believe what she was seeing. The Corvani system had once been home to 15 beautiful worlds, each one covered with cities and forests and oceans. Now 14 of those planets looked like giant skulls floating in space. Their surfaces were gray and cracked, with deep scars carved into the rock. Nothing moved on them, nothing lived. "My God," whispered Navigator Nina Ross, her neural interface, feeding her data about the dead worlds. "They stripped everything, plants, animals, even the soil. There's nothing left but bare rock." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres was working frantically at his tactical station, trying to get readings on what had happened. "Captain, I'm detecting massive amounts of organic waste in orbit around each planet. Whatever hit these worlds, they didn't just destroy life, they consumed it." Amy felt sick to her stomach. Billions of aliens had lived on those worlds. Now they were all gone, eaten by something that moved from planet to planet like a disease. What about the homeworld? She asked. Ryan adjusted his sensors and pointed to the 10th planet, still green and blue but surrounded by something that made Amy's blood turn cold. "It's still alive, but barely. Look at what's around it." The main screen zoomed in on the Corvani homeworld. Floating in space around the planet was the largest fleet Amy had ever seen. But these weren't metal ships like humans built. They were organic, looking like giant insects or sea creatures made of living tissue. The smallest ones were the size of human destroyers. The largest were bigger than space stations, pulsing with sickly green light. "How many?" Amy asked quietly. "Over 3,000 bioships," Ryan reported, "and they're not just sitting there. They're actively attacking the planet. I can see energy beams hitting the surface, and the planet's shield is flickering." Commander Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system from the USS Defiance. "Captain Sullivan, we're picking up a weak signal from the planet's surface." "It's the Corvani ambassador. Put him through." The face that appeared on the screen was barely recognizable as the proud alien who had sent the first distress call. Ambassador HFY looked exhausted and afraid. Behind him, Amy could see the walls of what looked like an underground bunker shaking from explosions above. "Human ships," HFY said, his voice filled with surprise and sadness. "You came. We did not think anyone would answer our call." "We're here to help," Amy said. "What's your situation?" "We have perhaps 8 hours before our shields fail completely. Our remaining population is in underground cities, but the Devourers are already breaking through in some areas. We estimate 3 million Corvani are still alive, but that number drops every minute." Amy looked around her bridge. 3 million lives and only 8 hours to save them. Against an enemy that had already destroyed the most advanced military in the galaxy. "Ambassador, we need to understand what we're fighting. Can you tell us about the Devourers?" HFY's expression grew even more grim. "They are not like any enemy we have ever faced. They do not negotiate, they do not retreat, and they do not show mercy. They are a hive mind that exists only to consume. When they destroy our ships, they absorb the wreckage into their own fleet. When they kill our people, they use the biological matter to grow new warriors." Chief Engineer Kate Walsh, listening from her station, shook her head. "So they get stronger every time they win a battle?" "Yes," HFY confirmed. "Our greatest mistake was fighting them with conventional tactics. We sent our best warships against them in organized formations. They studied our weapons, adapted to our strategies, and turned our own technology against us. The more we fought, the more powerful they became." Amy was starting to understand. They learned from every encounter. Exactly. By the end, they knew our tactics better than we did. They could predict our movements and counter our weapons before we even fired them. The communication ended when another explosion shook the Corvani bunker. Amy turned to her crew, seeing the same realization in their eyes that she felt in her heart. They were facing an enemy that had defeated a civilization far more advanced than humanity. An enemy that got smarter and stronger with every battle. Captain, Ryan said quietly, I've been analyzing the Devourer fleet movements. There's something strange about how they operate. What do you mean? Ryan brought up a tactical display showing the bioships around the planet. Look at their formation. It's perfect. Too perfect. Every ship moves in exactly the same pattern at exactly the same time. There's no individual decision-making, no variation in their attacks. Navigation Officer Danny Park from the USS Defiance joined the discussion over the communication link. Ryan's right. I've been watching them for an hour, and they repeat the same attack sequence every 17 minutes. It's like watching a computer program run over and over. Amy studied the display, and slowly an idea began to form in her mind. It was crazy, but it might be the only chance they had. They're not thinking like individuals, she said slowly. They're operating as one giant organism. Like a hive of insects or a school of fish. That's their strength, Ryan pointed out. Perfect coordination, no confusion, no hesitation. But it might also be their weakness, Amy continued. Think about it. If they operate as one mind, they can only respond to situations they understand. They can adapt to logical tactics and organize strategies because they can analyze and copy. Kate Walsh caught on first. But what if we don't use logical tactics? What if we do things that make no sense? Amy said, her voice growing more excited. What if we fight in ways that can't be analyzed or predicted because there's no pattern to analyze? The crew was quiet for a moment, thinking about what that would mean. Fighting without a plan. Making decisions that defied military logic. Doing things that seemed suicidal but might confuse an enemy that expected rational behavior. Captain, Nina Ross said softly, our ships are old and outdated. Our crews are people who couldn't fit into normal military units. Most commanders would see that as a disadvantage. But maybe it's exactly what we need, Amy finished. The Devourers learned to defeat advanced technology and perfect tactics. But how do you defeat technology that barely works and tactics that don't make sense? For the first time since arriving in the system, Amy felt a spark of hope. They couldn't fight the Devourers with superior firepower or better strategy. But they might be able to fight them with something the hive mind couldn't understand. Human unpredictability and the willingness to do the impossible when everything was at stake. All ships, Amy announced over the fleet communication system. Prepare for battle. We're going to show these aliens what humans do when the odds are impossible. Captain Amy Sullivan took a deep breath and gave the order that would change everything. All ships, attack formation Chaos 1. There was no such thing as attack formation Chaos 1. Amy had just made it up, but that was exactly the point. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres said from his tactical station, what exactly is Formation Chaos 1? Whatever you think it should be, Amy replied. Make it up as you go along. The 13 human ships broke apart and scattered in completely random directions. To any military observer, it would have looked like panic or complete incompetence. The USS Defiance shot straight up at a crazy angle. The USS Liberty spun in circles while firing its makeshift weapons. The USS Valor appeared to be flying backward while shooting at targets that weren't even there on the Devourer bioships. The hive mind tried to analyze what the humans were doing. For the first time in their conquest of the galaxy, they encountered something they couldn't understand. The human ships moved without pattern, they attacked without strategy. They seemed to be doing everything wrong. All ships, Amy called out. Remember what we talked about. Don't think like soldiers. Think like survivors. Chief Engineer Kate Walsh was already at work in the engine room of the USS Endurance. At 67 years old, she had forgotten more about spacecraft engineering than most people ever learned. As the ship shook from enemy fire, she was doing things to the engines that no sane engineer would attempt. Captain, Kate called over the communication system, I'm rerouting power from life support to the weapons. We'll have about 15 minutes of air, but our guns will hit 3 times. Harder. Do it, Amy replied without hesitation on the USS Liberty. Captain Helen Brooks was turning her converted cargo ship into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Liberty had been designed to carry supplies, not fight battles. But Helen had an idea that was so crazy it might actually work. "Dump the cargo," she ordered her crew, all of it, right into the path of those bioships. The Liberty's cargo bay opened and hundreds of tons of metal containers spilled into space. But these weren't just supply crates. Kate Walsh had spent the last 3 days filling them with explosives and scrap metal. When the Devourer ships tried to absorb the wreckage like they always did, they got a very unpleasant surprise. The explosions lit up space like fireworks, destroying 3 bioships and damaging several others. But more importantly, it confused the hive mind even more. Why were the humans throwing away their supplies? What kind of strategy was that? Navigator Nina Ross was proving that her blindness was actually an advantage. Her neural interface allowed her to see space in ways that normal vision couldn't match. She could feel the gravitational forces between planets and calculate impossible flight paths through the battlefield. "Captain Sullivan," Nina called out, "I can get us inside their formation, but we'll have to fly through that asteroid field." Amy looked at the screen. The asteroid field was a maze of rocks moving at high speed. No sane pilot would try to navigate through it during a battle. "Do it," Amy said. The USS Endurance dove into the asteroid field, with Nina guiding them through gaps that seemed impossibly small. The bioships tried to follow, but their perfect coordination worked against them. They all tried to take the same safe path, creating a traffic jam that allowed the human ship to escape. Communications. Officer Ben Clark was having the best day of his military career. His PTSD, which had gotten him removed from combat duty, was actually helping him in this battle. His mind, always expecting danger and watching for threats, could see patterns in the enemy movements that others missed. "Captain," Ben called out, "the bioships are trying to surround the USS Valor. They're moving ships from sectors 4 and 7 to cut off Captain Stone's escape route." "Bill," Amy called to Captain Stone over the communication system, "you've got company coming from your left and right." "I see them," came the calm reply from the 70-year-old captain. "Don't worry about me. I've got an idea." What Captain Stone did next became a legend that would be told throughout the galaxy for generations. Instead of trying to escape the trap, he flew his ship directly toward the largest bioship in the enemy formation. At the last second, he fired every weapon he had and then used his ship's emergency systems to eject all of his engine coolant. The superheated coolant created a massive cloud of vapor that blocked the bioship's sensors. In the confusion, Stone managed to fly his ship through a gap in their formation that no one else could see. The Devourers, expecting him to try to escape, were positioned to catch a fleeing ship. They weren't ready for one that attacked them head-on and then vanished in a cloud of steam. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres was coordinating the chaos from his position on the USS Endurance. His mechanical arm moved faster than his flesh one ever could, working the tactical controls while his mind calculated impossible attack runs. "Captain Brooks," he called to the USS Liberty, "can you get your ship to that damaged bioship at coordinates 4-7-Mark-2? "I can try," Helen replied. "What do you have in mind?" "Ram it." There was a pause. "Did you just order me to crash my ship into the enemy?" "Only if you think you can do it and survive," Ryan said. "But that bioship is trying to regenerate its damage. If we hit it while it's healing, we might be able to disrupt the whole process." Helen laughed, a sound that was part excitement and part terror. "You know what? Why not? It's not like we're following normal tactics anyway." The USS Liberty accelerated toward the damaged bioship. At the last moment, Helen fired her ship's escape pods and then crashed her cargo vessel directly into the alien's weak spot. The explosion tore through the bioship's regenerating hull and sent chunks of organic matter spinning through space. But the most important thing wasn't the damage they were causing. It was the effect their tactics were having on the Devourer. Hive mind, for millions of years, the Devourers had conquered galaxy after galaxy by learning from their enemies and adapting to their strategies. They had faced energy weapons, kinetic weapons, and exotic technologies beyond imagination. They had defeated species with perfect military discipline, and others with advanced artificial intelligence, but they had never faced an enemy that seemed to be making up the rules as they went along. An enemy that used their weaknesses as strengths and turned desperation into a weapon. An enemy that would sacrifice everything to save people they had never met. The hive mind began to make mistakes. For the first time in their existence, they started second-guessing their own decisions. They would move to counter one human ship, only to find that the ship had already changed course for no apparent reason. They would concentrate their fire on what seemed like the most dangerous target, only to discover that the humans had somehow turned their least dangerous ship into their most effective weapon. "All ships," Amy called out as explosions lit up. The space around them, they're starting to break formation. "Keep doing whatever you're doing. It's working." The battle raged on, with 13 impossible ships and their crews of misfits slowly proving that sometimes the best way to fight a superior enemy is to refuse to fight them the way they expect to be fought, but Amy knew they were running out of time. The Corvani planet's shields were still failing, and the human fleet couldn't keep this up forever. They needed to do something big, something that would end this battle once and for all. She looked at the massive hive ship in the center of the Devourer formation and made a decision that would save an entire species. Captain Amy Sullivan stared at the massive hive ship in the center of the Devourer formation. It was 10 times larger than any other bioship, pulsing with bright green energy that seemed to coordinate all the other vessels. She could see streams of data flowing between it and the smaller ships like veins carrying blood. "Ryan," she called to Lieutenant Commander Torres, "what do you think would happen if we destroyed that big ship in the middle?" Ryan looked at his tactical display, his mechanical arm moving quickly over the controls. "It looks like some kind of command vessel. If we could take it out, it might disrupt their coordination." "But our weapons can't penetrate its shields," Navigator Nina Ross pointed out. "I'm reading energy levels that are off the charts," Amy nodded. She had expected that. The Devourers wouldn't leave their most important ship undefended. But she had been thinking about something else, something that no military academy would ever teach. "What if we don't try to shoot through its shields?" she said quietly. The bridge fell silent. Everyone turned to look at their captain. "Ma'am?" Ryan asked. Amy walked to the main screen and placed her hand on it, feeling the vibrations from the ship's old engines. The USS Endurance had been scheduled for scrapping because her hull was getting weak and her systems were outdated. But maybe that weakness could become a strength. "Send a message to all ships," Amy ordered. "Tell them to transmit everything we've learned about Devourer tactics to every civilization in the galaxy. Make sure the data gets out no matter what happens next." Communications Officer Ben Clark's fingers flew over his controls. "Message sent, Captain. Every major alien government should receive our tactical analysis within the hour." Amy took a deep breath. "Now send another message to the fleet. Tell them to prepare for ramming speed." The bridge crew stared at her in shock. Rounding an enemy ship was considered a last resort, something you only did when all other options were gone. It was also almost always suicide for the crew doing the ramming. "Captain," Ryan said carefully, "the hive ship's shields will destroy us long before we get close enough to cause any damage." "Not if we approach it the right way," Amy replied. She turned to Nina. "Can you plot a course that uses the gravitational fields of the dead planets to accelerate us? Something that would make us move too fast for the bioships to track?" Nina's neural interface glowed as she calculated impossible mathematics in her head. "I can do it, but we'd be moving so fast that we couldn't change course. Once we start, we're committed, and the impact would destroy our ship completely." Kate Walsh added from the engine room over the communications system. Amy looked around at her crew. Ben Clark, whose PTSD had taught him to always watch for danger. Nina Ross, whose blindness had given her a unique way of seeing the universe. Ryan Torres, whose mechanical arm had made him faster and more precise than any normal human. Kate Walsh, whose 67 years of experience had shown her how to make impossible things work. These were the people that the regular military had discarded, the ones who didn't fit the perfect profile of a standard soldier. But they were also the ones who had volunteered to risk everything for aliens they had never met. "I won't order anyone to stay," Amy said. "We have escape pods. Anyone who wants to leave can go now." Nobody moved. "Captain," Ben said quietly, "we knew this was a one-way trip when we volunteered. Let's make it count." Amy felt a surge of pride in her crew. "All right then, Nina, plot that course. Kate, give me everything the engines have. Ryan, prepare to transmit our exact location to the other ships so they know where to aim their rescue efforts." As the USS Endurance began its final approach to the hive ship, something unexpected happened throughout the galaxy. The tactical data that Ben had transmitted was being analyzed by military leaders on dozens of different worlds. For the first time, alien civilizations were learning how to fight the Devourers. The key wasn't superior technology or perfect tactics. It was unpredictability. It was doing things that made no logical sense but somehow worked anyway. It was the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. Even when victory seemed impossible, the USS Endurance accelerated through the gravitational fields of the dead planets, picking up speed that no bioship could match. The hive ship's sensors detected the approaching vessel, but the Devourer hive mind couldn't understand what it was trying to do. Why would one small ship attack something so much larger? What tactical advantage could ramming possibly provide? The bioships tried to intercept the Endurance, but Nina's impossible navigation kept them just out of reach. The human ship twisted and spun through space like a dancer, using gravitational forces as stepping stones toward its target. 30 seconds to impact," Nina announced, her voice steady despite the fact that she was calculating their path to destruction. "All escape pods away," Ryan reported. "The crew is safe." But Amy noticed that the bridge crew hadn't left. They were all still at their stations, determined to see this through to the end. 10 seconds, Nina said. The hive ship's shields flared as they tried to stop the incoming vessel. But the USS Endurance was moving too fast and approaching from an angle that the Devourers hadn't predicted. The shields, designed to stop energy weapons and conventional attacks, couldn't adapt quickly enough to something so completely insane. Impact. Nina whispered. The USS Endurance struck the hive ship's core like a bullet hitting an egg. The explosion that followed lit up the entire star system. But more importantly, it severed the connections that the hive ship used to control the rest of the fleet. Without their central coordination, the bioships stopped moving in perfect formation. They began bumping into each other, firing at random targets and making mistakes that they had never made before. The hive mind that had conquered galaxy after galaxy was suddenly broken into thousands of confused pieces. The remaining human ships, following Amy's final orders, concentrated their fire on the largest bioships, without the hive ship to coordinate their defenses. The Devourers couldn't adapt to the human attacks. One by one, the massive alien vessels began to explode or drift helplessly through space. Within hours, the Devourer fleet was destroyed. The few surviving bioships fled the system in random directions, no longer connected to their central intelligence. Ambassador HFY stood on the surface of his homeworld, watching the strange human ships land to offer assistance. He could barely believe what had happened. The most advanced military in the galaxy had been saved by 13 old ships and a crew of people that other humans considered unfit for service. "Ambassador," said Commander Jake Morrison as he stepped out of his shuttle, "we're here to help with evacuation and medical aid." HFY looked at the human commander with new respect. "You have saved our entire civilization. How can we ever repay you?" Jake smiled. "Just tell other people what happened here. Let them know that sometimes the best help comes from the most unlikely places." Word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. The story of 13 human vessels defeating an enemy that had destroyed the Corvani Republic became legend. But more than that, it became a lesson. Military academies on dozens of worlds began studying human tactics. They tried to understand how unpredictability could be used as a weapon and how apparent weakness could become strength. Some succeeded better than others, but none could quite replicate what the humans had done. 6 months later, Admiral Lisa Parker received a message from the Galactic Council. It was an invitation for humanity to join as a full member with a special role as military advisors to other species. The message specifically requested that Earth send their most unconventional officers to help other civilizations prepare for threats like the Devourers, the Reserve Patrol Division. Once considered the bottom of the military hierarchy, became the most requested unit in human space. Veterans who had been passed over for promotion found themselves teaching alien generals. People with disabilities that had kept them out of regular service became heroes on distant worlds. Captain Amy Sullivan, posthumously promoted to admiral, had a monument built in her honor on the Corvani homeworld. But the inscription wasn't about her tactical genius or her sacrifice. It read, "She showed us that the strongest people are often those the world considers weakest." The human fleet that had been sent as a last resort, expected to accomplish nothing more than a hopeless gesture, had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. They had proven that heart and determination could triumph over superior technology, and that sometimes the most important battles are won not by the strongest armies, but by those who refuse to give up when everything seems lost. And in space, stations and military academies throughout the galaxy, when young officers asked how to defeat an impossible enemy, their instructors would tell them about 13 old ships and the crew of misfits who saved the civilization by doing everything wrong in exactly the right way. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their refusal to abandon hope and their willingness to help others, even when it meant sacrificing everything they had. Some called it foolishness. Others called it courage. But everyone agreed it was uniquely, unmistakably human.